Clive Barker's novella, The Hellbound Heart, is a cornerstone of horror as it introduces the terrifying Cenobites, demons who serve a devil-like entity called Leviathan in his hell known as the Labyrinth. These deadly beings appear to anyone who solves puzzles like the Lament configurations, which open portals between hell and earth. Cenobites are the eternal masters of pain and pleasure and don't really differentiate between the two. While Pinhead is the most famous Cenobite, many others have appeared in the comics, and it's safe to say that some of these are more terrifying than Pinhead himself. For example, the Hell Priestess. In this video, we'll explore the 20 most disturbing Cenobites beyond the movies. Before we get into our explanation though, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Number 1. Abagore. Abagore is best known as the sister of the female Cenobite, but she made quite a few appearances in the Devil's Brigade series. No one really knows who she was before Leviathan took her, but there are rumors she might have been Cleopatra, who had Mark Antony on his knees, or Helen of Troy, whose beauty started the legendary war. Regardless of her past life, she's now forever a Cenobite and a servant of Leviathan. She can't be killed or even wounded with human weapons. You'd need a Cenobite weapon or a blessed weapon to harm her. Like most Cenobites, she has pale skin and tiny black hair. Her head is adorned with pieces of sadistic art, including several sharp spikes on the top and a mouth stretched out like a zipper. Abagore loves to use a whip that ends in several hooks, and to match this weapon, she wears an extremely revealing dominatrix-styled leather suit. Though not very well known, Abagore has excellent strength, stamina, and tolerance for damage. She's proficient in the dark arts and has a talent for seducing men, making them her obedient slaves with just her words. Yet, all her actions are aimed at pleasing Leviathan. According to mythology, Abagore was one of the greatest lords of hell, ruling over more than 60 legions of demons. Some see her as the sister of the famous nun-turned-Cenobite female Cenobite. However, this sisterhood is based on their eternal punishment in hell and their shared love for torture. Number 2. Sculptress. The Sculptress is a stunning and elegant Cenobite, but as a Cenobite, her beauty is as terrifying as it is captivating. She's always dressed in a dark green off-shoulder dress, poised to carve your body into one of her macabre maquettes. Unsurprisingly, she uses the parts for her human body artwork. Her real name is unknown, but her passion for art and human anatomy has earned her the name the Sculptress. To truly understand her, let's explore one of her stories. As we've established, the Sculptress works with human body parts. But how does she acquire these bodies? They're brought to her by a Cenobite known as the Delivery Man, who also happens to be her love interest. The tragic twist? The Delivery Man has no lips, so they can never kiss. Everything changes when a young masochist solves the Lament configuration and opens the portal to hell. The Delivery Man captures this masochist and brings him to the Sculptress. Strangely, the more she mutilates and dismembers the masochist, the more he falls in love with her. She affectionately calls him "my sweet," and his love deepens with each cut. But one day, he witnesses the Delivery Man and the Sculptress making love. Understanding that physical pain is his pleasure, the Sculptress decides to inflict psychological pain instead. She cuts off his lips and gives them to the Delivery Man so they can finally kiss. The physical pain is nothing compared to the psychological torment, and it's this anguish that gives the Sculptress her sense of victory over the man. The Sculptress is devoted to her work and understands the intricate bond between pain and pleasure. She's an exemplary hedonist, finding joy in the balance between agony and ecstasy. Number 3. Face. In 1923, Lon Chaney was renowned in Hollywood as a master of disguise and a dedicated character actor. He was famous for his realistic roles, thanks to his intense makeup and mask work. But when we say intense, we mean extreme. Chaney took things to the next level, even peeling off a man's face for a more authentic look in his role as Fagin in Oliver Twist. This macabre act caught the attention of Leviathan, and soon Pinhead stepped in. He killed Fagin and offered Chaney the man's face as a bonus. Chaney's career soared and he became obsessed with face stealing. While preparing for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Chaney took the face of Henrik, a freak show performer in London. Things took a dark turn when Chaney proposed to his girlfriend, Patty Ruth Miller, who was already engaged to Norman Carey, Chaney's colleague. Chaney didn't take the rejection well, and she scarred Carey's face with sulfuric acid. Detective Murray was already on Chaney's trail for his previous face-stealing crimes, so Chaney had to go on the run. It turns out Pinhead had been manipulating events all along. After Chaney's final run-in with the law, Pinhead dragged him to hell and transformed him into the Cenobite known as Face. Now, with a head covered in stapled faces, Chaney ran the Grand Theater in hell, far from his silver screen dreams, but still in the spotlight in his own twisted way. As the Cenobite Face, Chaney possesses superhuman strength, the ability to withstand incredible damage, and virtual immortality. He's skilled in dark magic and can manipulate people's minds, making them part of his grotesque acts. He can control one person at a time, either by bending their will or outright possessing them, dead or alive. His fashion sense is gruesome. He has a collection of human faces he swaps out depending on his mood and wears hand-skin gloves. He can also get inside people's bodies to control them and even reanimate corpses. Number 4. Marova. There aren't many Cenobites who get involved in romantic relationships, or whatever passes for one in hell. We've seen the Sculptress and the Delivery Man, but they didn't exactly set any relationship goals for the other Cenobites. That title goes to Marova and her boyfriend, Pinhead. It seems the whole point of giving Cenobites a love life was to make them more relatable, something viewers or readers could connect with, especially when it comes to Pinhead. Now we get a glimpse of what these hellish beings do when they're not busy torturing and killing people. Marova has a pretty unique appearance. Yes, she's attractive as you'd expect. Pinhead wouldn't settle for anything less, but she has the bones of a horse's snout stitched into her face, and instead of human legs, she's got horse legs. Unlike most Cenobites, she sports long hair styled into a mohawk, and her arms are covered in horsehair. Unfortunately, this intriguing character didn't last long in the Hellraiser universe. She was severely wounded by the Harrowers, humans with the power to fight Cenobites, thanks to Leviathan's sister, Morte Mame. Marova teleported back to Hell, where Pinhead watched his love succumb to her injuries. He pulled the sword from her gut and she perished in Hell. Marova is one of the rare beings to have died twice, once as a human and then again as a demon. But what happens when you die in Hell? Do you get destroyed, killed forever, banished somewhere? It's difficult to say. Number 5. The Ferryman. In the 1930s, there was a man named Harmon Taylor, a politician and a member of the KKK. According to family legend, Taylor had hidden a fortune of treasure somewhere. He bought a boat, refashioned it, and called it the Dixie Shadow. This boat, however, became a floating house of terror. Taylor would lead midnight raids on the Dixie Shadow, abducting people of color and forcing them into gladiatorial duels on board. Although he frequently picked up new fighters, he always saved the best for last, a champion known as the Ferryman. The Ferryman was a disciple of Pain, so strong he could crush skulls with his bare hands, much like Gregor Clegane from Game of Thrones. During one of these raids, the crew of the Dixie Shadow found the Lament configuration. The next day, the boat was discovered, but its crew had mysteriously vanished, leaving only a mentally disturbed child behind. The Dixie Shadow was left beached, and it soon became a derelict ship. However, locals claimed it was still seen on the water, and each time it appeared, someone would disappear. Fast forward to 1992. Sam Boyd, a former member of the KKK, became obsessed with finding Taylor's treasure and the ship. Boyd was a senatorial candidate, but his racist views made it difficult for him to secure funding. Desperate, he set out to find the Dixie Shadow and eventually succeeded. On board, he discovered the Lament configuration and solved it, only to come face to face with the Ferryman, who had been transformed into a Cenobite. The Ferryman and his gash tore Boyd's chest open and tied him to the steering wheel, ending his quest in gruesome fashion. Number 6. Grillard. In the year 1220 AD, Count Carillion led his army to the eastern Mediterranean. During the campaign, he discovered an ornate box and brought it back with him. Not long after, Father Robotai from the Count's parish requested an audience with Lady Carillion. He warned her of the great evil he believed the Count had brought back. Together, they researched the history of the mysterious box, hoping to use it against Satan himself. By 1223, the Count returned home, feeling that the battle's bloodshed and loss of wealth were no longer worth it. He and the Countess tried to use the box to ward off all evil, but instead, they summoned the Cenobite named Grillard. Grillard dragged the Count to hell, leaving Lady Carillion and Father Robotai to vow to continue their struggle against Satan. However, the two fell in love, and before long, the Countess became pregnant with Robotai's child. A year later, they accidentally summoned Grillard once again, and this time, the couple was taken to hell. It turned out that Grillard had made a deal. He allowed Count Carillion to return to Earth as Lady Carillion's child. So, the Count was reborn as the wife's own child. Fast forward to 1992 when a young mob leader named Carlos witnessed the power of the Lament configuration. He tricked Vito, the head of a rival gang, into solving the puzzle, but Vito was blindfolded and unaware of what he was doing. When Grillard appeared, he told Carlos that it was his own desire for more wealth and power that had summoned him, not Vito's actions. This echoes what Pinhead had claimed in the movies. It's desire that truly summons the Cenobites, not just the hands that solve the Lament configuration. Number 7. Hunger. Hunger is pretty scrawny even for a Cenobite, and that says a lot. His pleasure comes from collecting unfortunate souls in the most brutal ways. Unlike other Cenobites who are often named for their appearance or role in the labyrinth, Hunger's name perfectly captures his essence. Remember the story about the guy named Byron who murdered his entire family? Hunger took those corpses and turned them into beasts, and then fed Byron to those very creatures. It's probably the sickest form of cannibalism you could imagine, but that's just one of his many cruel and heartless deeds. Hunger is also a fairly old Cenobite. He first appeared in 1528 to a priest named Padre de Bigotto. The priest summoned Hunger by reciting an enchantment while flaying his own body with a whip. Number 8. Folgar. In 1620, a boy named Robert Johnson solved the Lament configuration and unknowingly summoned an ancient Cenobite named Folgar. Folgar struck a deal with Robert's parents, agreeing to spare the boy if they would go to hell in his place. But Mr. and Mrs. Johnson broke their end of the bargain, fleeing to America in hopes of escaping their fate. They thought they were safe, but Folgar tracked them down and dragged them to hell. Because they reneged on their deal, Folgar cursed their bloodline with the sign of Leviathan, dooming every Johnson born afterwards to die at the age of 25. These cursed Johnsons were then planted in fields under the control of Aparius, the beekeeper. Nearly 4 centuries later, Folgar was chosen as one of the Cenobites to fight Morte Mame's harrowers. He followed Marova into battle and gained the upper hand against a harrower named Ron Ringwood. Just as Folgar was about to dismember Ringwood, another harrower, Vera Wyshak, sliced off Folgar's flaming hand with her supernatural boomerang. But Vera quickly found herself in trouble when Folgar turned his full wrath upon her. Desperate, she called on Leviathan's sister, Morte Mame, for help. Morte Mame made Vera's blood and saliva acidic to the Cenobites, so the more Folgar tortured her, the more he harmed himself. Vera ultimately spit on him, leaving him powerless. In the end, all the Cenobites, including Folgar, were defeated. 9. General. When Leviathan appoints you as the leader of Hell's army, you must be something special. The General was that leader, commanding Hell's forces when Morte Mame's harrowers launched their attack. He sounded the call to arms and chose 6 Cenobites to face the harrowers, who were determined to free Morte Mame. The chosen Cenobites included Folgar, Halo Blades, Cowboy, Cattleskull, Turpis, and Marova, who was not only the leader of the group but also Pinhead's favorite. On May 10, 1992, the General failed to live up to Leviathan's expectations. 5 of his soldiers were killed on the battlefield, and Marova retreated to Hell with mortal wounds, only to die in Pinhead's arms. Naturally, Leviathan was furious. His demons had been slaughtered by mere humans. The harrowers had declared war on Leviathan, and the General needed to act fast. In response, the General created a creature named Furai, also known as Opacus Farage, by fusing the bodies of the 5 fallen Cenobites. Opacus Farage was a formidable foe, and the harrowers were on the brink of defeat. However, a harrower named Marty Sevenbird sacrificed himself to destroy the creature, ensuring the permanent end of the Cenobites. Number 10. Bal Barth. Mrs. Bal Barth was once a librarian and a mother. Her world was shattered when her son fell gravely ill, and she desperately turned to books, searching for a cure. Despite reading countless volumes, she found nothing but disappointment. Then, a local pharmacist offered her the Lament configuration and promised it would solve all her problems. Unbeknownst to her, the pharmacist served Leviathan. When she solved the puzzle box, the Cenobites took her to the labyrinth. However, before her transformation, she was granted one last moment to see her son, now miraculously cured. In Hell, she became the Cenobite known as Bal Barth. She continued her work as a librarian, but in a twisted form. Her glasses were stitched into her head, a permanent fixture as she managed to read books made from tormented flesh. Unlike other Cenobites who reveled in physical torment, Bal Barth was an intellectual among them, a scholar appointed by Leviathan for bookkeeping. She knew all of Leviathan's secrets, his plans, and how he operated, but she kept that knowledge to herself. 11. Alistair and Cockies. Alistair was once a humble man from medieval Italy who fell in love with a girl named Cockies. Though she loved him back, Cockies initially rejected Alistair. Intrigued, Alistair began to follow and stalk her. eventually discovering that she rejected him because her father and brother had molested and abused her. The two lovers took revenge in a gruesome manner, feeding the brother to his father. The father, unaware of the truth, choked to death when he learned that the meal he had just enjoyed was made from his son. Leviathan took notice of Alistair's cunning and cruelty and deemed him worthy of becoming a Cenobite. In Hell, Alistair found the ancient species known as Nightbreed were a threat to Cenobite law and order. He formed a gash called Alistair's Gash, which included Cenobites like Yamama Vidatu, Asmaa, Gehenna, and Cockies. Together, they waged war against the Nightbreed, even going so far as to disobey Leviathan and Pinhead's forces. In the end, only Cockies and Alistair remained, fighting to the bitter end. Number 12. Asmaa. What little is known about Asmaa's transformation to a Cenobite can be gleaned from the Hellraiser Nightbreed Jihad comics. She and her sister Yamama Vidatu became part of Alistair's Gash and turned against the forces of Hell. Their objective in going rogue was to destroy the Nightbreed. However, Leviathan had forbidden Alistair and his followers from attacking the Nightbreed because it would bring chaos to the realm, which went against Leviathan's will. Despite this, Alistair launched a jihad against the Nightbreed. Once the battle began, Leviathan sent his priest Pinhead along with the Cenobite Chatterer to restore order. Asmaa, though a dwarf Cenobite and the smallest of all, was known for her ferocity and her fierce protection of her elder sister. Much like Abagore, she had long slits on both sides of her mouth and little golden hair that covered almost all of her body. Despite her size, she was a formidable warrior. The name Asmaa is an interesting blend of hell and heaven. In Zoroastrianism, Asmaa is the demon of wrath, while in Sanskrit, Deva means god. This unique nomenclature kind of tells us about the duality of her nature. Number 13. Gehenna. In life, Gehenna was a priest who served Moloch and finds mention in the Hebrew Bible associated with child sacrifices. Gehenna carried out these horrific rituals by tossing children into fires as offerings to his god. Despite his cruel actions, he had a small shred of humanity. Before sacrificing the children, he would feed them herbs to ensure they didn't feel the pain of the flames. One day, Gehenna discovered that his own son was to be sacrificed. Despite his desperate protests, the followers showed no mercy and threw his son into the fire. What tormented Gehenna the most was that they didn't have time to give his son the herbs to spare him from the agony of the fire. After this tragic event, Gehenna was taken to hell and transformed into a Cenobite. His new form was skeletal with spikes on his head. However, due to his past encounters with fire, he became immune to it as a Cenobite. Number 14. Atkins. Atkins was a soldier during the Vietnam War, so highly regarded that his superior once said, "No 100 soldiers could stand up to Atkins if he was buck naked in the middle of a field with nothing but a little penknife." On one mission, Atkins and his unit discovered a tunnel filled with Vietnamese rebels. He entered alone and killed 7 of them. As he went deeper into the tunnel, he got lost in the maze-like structure. Desperate, Atkins tried to dig his way out but failed. He then attempted to find a path through the maze, hoping it would lead to freedom. Instead, he was met by 3 Cenobites. It turned out the tunnel was actually a puzzle, and by moving in the correct sequence, Atkins had unknowingly solved it. The Cenobites took him to Hell's creation chamber, where he was transformed into a Cenobite himself. Interestingly, even as a Cenobite, Atkins continued to use human weapons, including explosives, knives, and automatic rifles. 15. Orno. Orno appears in the 5th issue of Clive Barker's Hellraiser. As a human, he was a man deeply interested in science but became tempted by the lure of dark and forbidden knowledge. He eventually came across the Lament configuration and solved it. Once in the labyrinth, Leviathan tasked him, now a Cenobite, with finding and inventing new gateways between Hell and Earth, similar to the Lament configuration. To accomplish this, Orno was provided with Hell's denizens, whom he used as raw material. Orno imbued one of these denizens with his raw essence and sent it to Earth to create a new gateway, one modeled on the human mind. This creature, referred to as raw material in the comics, mated with a woman, impregnating her. The woman died during childbirth, delivering a boy named Ian Miller, who was given a puzzle box and became its guardian. Number 16. Flagellum. Sister Flagellum, known as the Watcher of the Order, is one of the most influential Cenobites in the Hellraiser universe. Why? She serves as a Cenobite priestess under Leviathan's command. If Pinhead was the Hell Priest, she was the priestess. In Hell, she spends most of her time in a trance-like meditation, completely cut off from all sensations. In this state, she contemplates the ideals of Chidna and Basilisk, 2 demons created by Leviathan to maintain order in Hell. Their endless dance at the center of Hell embodies its very essence. Sister Flagellum is only awakened from her meditation for matters of critical importance and only when Leviathan decrees it. Before becoming a Cenobite, Sister Flagellum wasn't unfamiliar with desire and rejection. She initially committed herself to preserving her chastity for marriage, but was continually overlooked by men. This led to growing frustration and a deep sense of unfulfilled desire. Her emotional turmoil drove her towards increasingly elaborate fantasies and the use of exotic devices to satisfy her unquenchable thirst for physical pleasure. This quest for fulfillment ultimately led her to the obsidian rhombus phallus, a device that was essentially a sexual version of the lament configuration. It provided her with ultimate satisfaction, but also led to her undoing, resulting in a tragic, self-destructive climax that transformed her into a Cenobite. As a Cenobite, Sister Flagellum serves as a vigilant guardian for Leviathan, spending most of her existence in deep meditation, dreaming of hell's structured beauty. She is only awakened to confront and quell signs of chaos, and once order is restored, she returns to her solitary dreams. In the more obscure comics, Flagellum is depicted as a formidable Cenobite with immense strength, resilience to all forms of physical harm, mastery of dark magic, and of course, immortality. Her capacity to endure pain is exceptional, even among Cenobites, due to her ritualistic self-flagellation and mutilation. Hence her name. She possesses the rare ability to levitate at will and practices anthropomancy, an ancient form of divination that interprets the future by reading entrails. Flagellum also maintains a psychic connection with Leviathan, receiving its directives telepathically and communicating them to her fellow Cenobites. She can even speak as Leviathan to other Cenobites by serving as a medium. 17. Clown. Although hell is for people who commit sins, there were many children there who were considered too innocent to be truly damned. Being children, they needed entertainment, and that wouldn't come from demons who play with flesh, right? But Leviathan wanted the best for his semi-damned children, so he brought to the labyrinth the host of a children's show called the Mr. Winky Dink Show. And now, Winky Dink had no option but to entertain these children for the rest of his existence. However, he did come up with a special version of his show best suited for hellish children. Although a pseudo-Cenobite in the beginning, Winky Dink was transformed into a pure Cenobite after some time. It was after his full transformation that Winky Dink came to be known as the Clown Cenobite. One of the signs that Clown was a fierce and unforgiving Cenobite is reflected in the fact that he electrocuted his pet named Agathion simply because Agathion had displayed an ounce of mercy towards a man who was begging Clown to be spared. Number 18. Saucy Jack. Saucy Jack appears in the 7th issue of Clive Barker's Hellraiser, and despite what his name might suggest, he was anything but charming. He was a violent and psychotic demon with a thirst for destruction and death. The reason for this? Saucy Jack was created from the body and soul of none other than the infamous serial killer, Jack the Ripper. The comic reveals that Jack was killing and dismembering his victims in search of the Heart of Damnation, believed to be a gateway to hell. After killing his 25th victim, he removed her heart and realized his quest was complete. This discovery led to his transformation into the Cenobite known as Saucy Jack. In 1991, a woman named Glenda Martinac became obsessed with Jack the Ripper while researching him. Her obsession drove her to become a copycat killer, earning her the name the Chicago Killer. However, her life was ended when she was killed by Saucy Jack himself. 19. Yamama Vidatu. Yamama Vidatu, the elder sister of Ashmadeva, was also a member of Alistair's Gash. After the rebellion ended in defeat and the death of her sister, Yamama Vidatu mourned deeply. However, she managed to escape the purge with the help of Gehenna. What happened to them afterward remains largely unknown. Unlike most Cenobites, Yamama Vidatu wears a tight red leather outfit instead of the typical black. She also dons a red mask stitched to her face and, unlike other Cenobites, has a white ponytail. Yama shared her sister's fiercely protective nature, but despite her efforts, she couldn't save her sister in the end. Number 20. Mr. Soul. Mr. Soul appeared in a disturbingly titled comic called Dance of the Fetus, a play on the phrase dying of the fetus. He was summoned by a woman named Alice who had been consumed with thoughts of suicide. Her 210th thought was powerful enough to summon Mr. Soul, who assisted Alice in ending her life. However, after her death, Mr. Soul discovered that Alice was pregnant. The Cenobite removed the fetus from her womb and sent it to Limbo. Alice was then taken to Hell, where her sole purpose was to produce Cenobite fetuses. Unlike regular Cenobites, Mr. Soul had razor-sharp teeth. Despite being male, he wore clothing typically associated with dominatrixes, adding to his sinister appearance. And that lovely thought brings us to the end of our list. We want to hear about your favorite Cenobites in the comments down below, and if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. This is Wheezy249 signing off, but you can always find me on Twitch. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.